And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the RBLR Sports podcast. We are here tonight to cover the Rowdies, as we usually do. I am here tonight with my usual co-host, Carlos. So, Carlos, how are you doing on this Tuesday?
James, it's freezing outside. It's like 30 degrees, and it's windier than it's ever been up here. I hate it. The weather sucks. I've been inside all day. So I'm really excited to, do something in my room other than sleep and play NHL 23 on my PlayStation. And talk about a fun game. I think we can say that. I'll save all my comments for that in a little bit. But it was just great to see this team back out on the field. Our Tampa Bay Rowdies playing a regular season game, a meaningful game. I don't know. They got the juices flowing for sure. And then the long season ahead. So I'm excited to see where it goes from there. But again, before we talk about any of that, James, I'm doing well. It's cold, so that's not great. But how are you doing down back home in Florida?
Yeah, it's not cold here, but it has cooled down from almost 90 degrees already, like it was at the end of February. So I don't mind that. But nice. Yeah, this past weekend, we had a game, as you said. Tampa Bay Rowdies had their home and season opener, and I don't know if they got the benefit of the nice weather, but unfortunately, we did not get the result that I think all of us wanted in this one. So yeah, with this season opener on Saturday, it ended up being a 1-1 draw versus Indy 11. There were a lot of talking points, Carlos. There is so much to get to, and I just don't know if we're gonna even be able to fit it all in this week. But yeah, so we're gonna have to get into that in a little bit here, and we're also going to have to do our preview for the second game of the season that is away to Orange County. So stick around for all of that, obviously. Last week, Carlos, we did a bad job of predicting the results, so everyone who made a prediction gets 0 points. 0 points.
I was so close.
Yeah, unfortunately, nobody gets anything on our end, so the RBLR Rowdies putt continues on without a leaderboard. Now, to get into everything else, I just want to say, please like and subscribe to us on YouTube, as well as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We are at RBLR Sports. Let's get into it, Carlos. Can you do the quick home opener preview, or the review, I should say? Yeah. And then, obviously, we will get into some questions, and I'll go ahead and I'll ask you a question and see what you think.
Let's do it, James. Yeah. I don't know. I wasn't there. I was going to say on a steamy, humid Saturday night. I can't be sure because I didn't check the weather. But back home in Al Lang Stadium, the Tampa Bay Rowdies opened up their season at home with a controversial draw, we can say. The starting lineup was made up of Phil Breno in goal. Relatively surprisingly, I didn't realize that Sparrow had picked up an injury sometime during the preseason. Connor Antley, Jordan Doherty, Forrest Lasso, and Aaron Guillen made up most of the back line. We had Sebastian Dahlgaard, Hilton, Harivo, as well as Charlie Dennis made up our midfield unit. And Cal Jennings and JJ Williams made up the attacking unit. The first half offered pretty little. It was back and forth, very cagey, back and forth and tussling as the two sides really try to figure each other out. You could see the preseason rust still coming off of both teams, I would say, especially maybe the Tampa Bay Rowdies. Couldn't really break anything behind Indy's really solid back line to their credit. The second half offered less, but there were 2 goals, and ours came from practically an open net for Jake Arman, who found himself, I think, with one of the easiest goals he'll score for the Tampa Bay Rowdies. The Indy goal scored really, really deep. At stoppage time, caved off of what James describes in our notes here as one of the worst calls ever. And I would probably agree with that. It's a very questionable call. Sebastian Guenzati went down just, I wouldn't say, I don't know, outside of the box pretty clearly. There's not really any debate about that. Forrest Lasso was the man who fouled him. Maybe fell asleep just a little bit at the worst time possible. But again, I can't blame him too much for that. And a really, really unfortunate call. A foul, yes. A penalty, never. And Indy did their job, scored that penalty, and knotted the game at 1 as stoppage time came to a close. Yeah. So James, really cagey back and forth game. Lots to talk about in there. And, I just really rapidly went through that quick review. But there's a lot to talk about, a lot of storylines, obviously, with, Sebastian Guenzati coming back home, Juan Tejada coming back home, two guys who are, Guenzati, a legend at this club, Tejada, a fan favorite at this club in his short time here. So guys that came back home, kind of a, sweet and sour homecoming for the fans and them, I'm sure. I think one of the biggest things that I noticed having tuned into the game from the broadcast, obviously, and I'm sure everybody back at the game kind of had their heart stop for a second, was when Lewis Hilton went down with an injury pretty early on, James. I want to say, let me check my phone again. Let's check when that happened. It was really, really early on. The 9th minute, it says the sub came. You're better at the tactical stuff than me, James. So I'll ask you this. How did that sub change the game as Jan Ekra came into the game? I'm sure much earlier than he would have expected. 9th minute.
Yeah, so this ultimately came at, like you said, a very early point of the game, and that means that it impacted the way that we were trying to play. I think, though, from the post-game press conference, we spoke to Neil Collins, and he, tried to give us a good idea of where they were trying to hit Indy 11, and a couple of things that he said included, they had in the preseason, when you're coming into this, you don't have a lot of footage for what a team is supposed to be doing, when they actually come out into the season itself. And so they have to do, 90% of their preparation is themselves, 10% is preparing for the other team, is the way that he put it to me. And I think that the way that they intended to go about this was to try and isolate their two players up top, mostly Cal Jennings and JJ Williams. And there were a couple of times that they were able to do that, but they wanted to isolate them up top against individual players and then give them the chance to run at them a little bit or run past them. And, if they can incorporate the players who were playing on the wings, then all the better. But I don't think that that was necessarily the first idea. I think that Lewis Hilton would have had a lot more impact if he were on the field, obviously, because he could have been able to find those players on the wing and incorporate them a little bit more. Connor Antley and Sebastian Dalgard were the two starters on either side, Connor Antley on the right and Dalgard on the left. Now, they did not have a ton of influence in the first half. I would say that Sebastian Dalgard had less than Connor Antley, and I think that that often just comes down to Lewis Hilton's ability to not only win back possession, but then what he does with it is he usually tries to circulate it out to someone who is out on the wing. And because everybody is crowded around, when he is winning the ball back, then he can find someone who's usually open. Obviously, that was not there. Jan Ecker is a very good player, but he's not the same player as Lewis Hilton. He is not going to do as much defensive work, and he's probably going to do a lot less of the long distribution. He's going to try and turn with the ball and maybe get past one or two players before he finds someone breaking the lines a little bit. But yeah, that was something that we were missing, I think, is Lewis Hilton's influence, not only on the attacking side, but also on the defensive side. And then afterwards, Carlos, it just turned into pretty much the execution from the Rowdies was poor. There were a lot of misplayed passes, and I think that the passing accuracy from each individual player, if you looked it up, I'm sure that there would be some players who had closer to 100, and the vast majority of them, unfortunately, would probably not be. And I think that you put it perfectly there with just, preseason rust. Yeah. There were a couple of teams that we will talk about later on in this episode that did not appear to have preseason rust when they had their first game. But unfortunately, the Rowdies weren't one of them. And honestly, I think Indy 11 was not one of them. I think Indy did their game very well. They did what they were trying to do. And a couple of their guys were made to immediately look like very, very shrewd signings. So, yeah, we have a lot more to get into for this game, but I will get to them, when we get to them. So, Carlos, the next question that I want to ask here, and I'll lead this into you, is what were the Rowdies trying to do as far as you could see, but more so, how was Indy handling it? I think that was pretty impressive from Indy. So what did you see them doing, and how did they, deal with the Rowdies and our attempts to get past them?
Yeah, I think this is kind of like the question that I wanted to zone in on here and then take some time to discuss about. Because, I'm gonna use the phrase preseason rust probably a little more than I should throughout this episode, because I think it's way way too early after one game to be like, oh, it's over, or this team sucks or whatever. And then obviously it's the first game, so you can't really make a ton of judgment calls from this one performance. That being said, I think Indy did a really good job of just, I think their game plan was pretty clear. They wanted to come out and make sure that the Rowdies couldn't, penetrate their back line. They wanted to keep the game static and maybe just use their counterattack when they could. They have some pretty speedy guys that can dribble well and produce a good counterattack if they need to. But I think overall, like, the thing to focus in on is how well Indy just kept the game static. We couldn't really get anything going. I expected a little bit more from guys like, like Aravo to point out from him. Cal Jennings obviously had the missed penalty, which, could be looked back on as a pretty crucial point in the game, given that we tied the game 1-1, and Indy put away their penalty. So, I mean, that's a huge moment in the game as well. I think you summarized it well and saying we just didn't execute well. It's just kind of hard for me to like put my finger on what our game plan actually was, because it was so static, because we couldn't really get anything going. Even our goal, the Jake Armin goal, was like kind of a fluky goal.
I felt the same when it happened.
It was, I mean, even it felt like that was just kind of a throw the ball in the box type thing and see what happens, which is, a pretty solid plan. Like, it works sometimes, and obviously it worked in this case. Dalgard just kind of threw a ball into the front of the net. Somehow, Indy's goalie, whose name I can never figure out how to pronounce, Yannick Oeti, I don't know what he was doing. He just missed the ball entirely. It was pretty clearly right in front of him, and I don't know, he missed it, and Armin had an open net to put it away. So I don't know. I think when that goal went in, I felt pretty comfortable that we had a really, really good shot of closing out the game with 3 points. Given that, for as well as Indy kept us static, didn't let us create a lot of chances, they weren't really creating much either. And then all of a sudden, one really, really questionable and bad call cost us the 2 extra points we should have gotten. That's not to say it's the ref's fault. I think, again, we just couldn't execute, and Indy did a good job of keeping that game kind of boring, to say the least. I don't know. I think that was their plan, and it was a good plan. They did well, and eventually it paid off for them, even though maybe it shouldn't have. Their goalie came up big, in the penalty when they needed him to. Our guys couldn't finish. Cal Jennings missed a penalty. I mean, it happens. It's a penalty. Somebody I thought might have been a little bit more absent than I hoped he would be was JJ Williams as well. He's kind of a big physical presence that I thought would be make his mark pretty early on for the team. I think I'm pretty confident in saying he didn't really make much of a mark at all. But again, first game of the season, you can't knock these guys too much for that. I think not to like get into the next game already, but if this next team we're playing next weekend, who I'm not going to mention yet, so we can save it for the preview, is as weak as I think they are, then it could be a good chance for us to kind of get some momentum going, get some points under us and some goals under our feet. Because I think that's going to be the biggest thing going forward is can Jennings, can Williams, even Charlie Dennis as well as kind of the attacking midfielder, can they gel together quick enough and score enough goals for, these signings to be worth it, right? Because right now, looking back at this game against Indy, the game plan was just not clear. I don't know what we were trying to do, but it really wasn't working.
Yeah, I think you're right. And a lot of that with, again, we talked about it already, but Lewis Olden. And I think that with us trying to isolate the attackers against their defensive line, JJ Williams is a large physical guy. He can, put a defender off his game, but the problem was that he was mostly going up against their Cuban defender, Adrian Dispe. And I'll tell you what, Adrian Dispe had just a fantastic game. I haven't seen a ton of Adrian Dispe in his career. He has played against us a couple of times. I can't, pick out exactly when they were, but yeah, he just was made to look like, a man amongst boys kind of situation there. And he ate everything up. JJ Williams, it's harder, obviously, to attack than it is to defend. If you're defending, then you just kind of have to clear it out away every time. And to, be an attacker, you have to keep it close. And that requires a lot more skill. It's a weird analogy, but I'll take it back to the IRA talking to Margaret Thatcher. They said that you have to you have to get it right every time. We only have to get it right once, and that's kind of the case for JJ Williams. He has to get it right once and get through, but Adrian Dispe got it right pretty much every time, and he really shut him down that game. I kind of thought that after the halftime break, it was Adrian Dispe, Cam Lindley, and maybe Charlie Dennis that were the best players on the field so far. And he just looked very good. He was able to stop pretty much everything that we were trying to do. And I didn't see enough from Cal Jennings in this game. It's the first game. He's going to have better performances for sure. And he was probably just getting his sea legs, so to speak. But I think that he needs to get a little bit more into the rhythm of things. And that's just something that's going to happen for a player who likes to have the ball at his feet, as it appears Cal Jennings does. So hopefully he will get that rhythm. Yeah,
it seems like I don't know. Again, first game of the season, once he gets that momentum going, it seems like he's a guy that can score a lot of goals really quickly. So I'm excited for when that happens, because he can take on guys. He can shoot from outside the box from the tape I've seen on him, and the little bit of preseason action we've gotten to see. Him and JJ Williams up top, I think he's going to be a really, really good duo.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of when it's going to click. There's no way for us to tell, right? It's just going to take a few more games. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they click next game. Maybe it just takes one more week. I don't know. We'll see what happens. And I think it's important for you, like you said, to point out Charlie Dennis. I think he had a great game as well. I was going to save this for a little later, but I think it's just important to talk about really quickly, kind of topical. A lot of new guys on the team, James. Really quickly, are there any new guys in particular, maybe just Charlie Dennis again, that stood out as players that made their mark pretty early on in their first, regular season debut with the Rowdies? Because for me, like I mentioned earlier, I think Dennis is probably that guy. Lasso is new-ish, if you want to consider him new. I think he had a great game, other than the foul at the end. He had a fantastic game. It was really just shutting down anything over the top for Indy. Literally everything that came in over the top, he was shutting down. Doherty, again, new-ish, had a fantastic game on the back line. Really no complaints about him. Are any new guys in particular you might want to highlight in their first regular season debut?
Yeah, those were the main three that I actually would have gotten to. I think, we've already talked about JJ Williams and Cal Jennings, who were two of the newcomers. I don't think that they had the best of games. Phil Brenno was out there, and he didn't have a good game, but he didn't have a bad game. It was just that he had one huge problem to face, and that was the penalty. Right. It's hard to save a penalty. That's just the nature of what penalties are. And, it is a skill, but they can't all be Emiliano Martinez. I really don't think that you can knock Phil Brenno for not saving a penalty. The other time that he was really tested in the game was in the first half, where Indy 11 had the best chance of the first half outside of our missed penalty, which sucked. But he bobbled one chance, and Jonas Fjellberg came in, and he actually got on the rebound, but he clipped it up to try and put it past Brenno and into the net. I think Brenno just got the barest of touches on it and knocked it wide. So he did actually make the save, but it was off of his own rebound. So you have to take that into consideration. If we're going to continue going through them, I really did like Charlie Dennis. I think, even without consulting the statistics of the game, which I don't have readily in front of me here, I would just say that Charlie Dennis kind of passed the eye test, so to speak. He looked good out there. He did what he was supposed to do, and he did probably more than he was supposed to do, I would even say. Jordan Doherty, I think that he looked. I keep saying this to people, and I don't know if it sounds like I'm disparaging him because I don't mean to. Jordan Doherty looks fitter than he did in the past, and that's not to say that he wasn't fit, because obviously to be a professional soccer player, you have to be, pretty fit. You just have to be. It's not like I'm saying like he was a larger guy before or couldn't keep up, but now he just looks leaner and faster. I don't know what they have in the water in Ireland. It's not something that I think Ireland is known for, but he might be able to change the narrative there, I guess.
Yeah.
And then Forrest Lasso, he did do well to mop up a lot of things that Indy put his way. You've already mentioned that, but I do want to say Forrest Lasso also needs to know better, and he does. He does know better, but he needs to work better on reining it in certain moments, because there was the foul, obviously, that led to a penalty, even though it wasn't in the box. But there were two instances, like within a minute and then maybe 5 or 10 minutes before then, when the same kind of thing happened. Forrest Lasso was kind of baited into giving away a foul. And these were all fouls that I think were pretty cheap. The first one that I remember was also with Sebastian Guinzotti, and then it was right outside the box on the if we're facing Phil Breno's side, then it would be to his left, and he brought Steba down, and he it was another one that I thought was pretty weak, but it's not my prerogative. It is the referees, unfortunately. And then there was another one literally like a minute or two before he brought down Sebastian Guinzotti in stoppage time, and he had already been complaining about all of these stupid little fouls, and then the next thing is he gets that one that's outside the box, and you can see his frustration that everyone in the stands felt. He goes up to the referee, and if you watch it again, you can see his face go, what? Yeah. But again, that's up to the referee. So you kind of, and this was something that Forrest Lasso said in the post-game preview, or the post-game press conference, that he needs to do better in those situations and kind of not get suckered into that. Refereeing is kind of a thing where you don't want to give that guy the opportunity to make the call. You don't want to give this Elvis Osmanovic the chance to make a bad call, because apparently he will decide that something that was 2 feet outside the box, 2 yards outside the box, was in it somehow. So you don't give him the opportunity to give that call against you. And like I said, Forrest Lasso recognized that. So I'm pretty sure that he'll be aware and want to work on it for the next game.
Yeah. Forrest Lasso is a guy we can't disparage him too much, because he's just, he's multiple time USL Defender of the Year for a reason. He's a veteran of the game at this point, and he will for sure correct any mistakes he made this past game.
He'll know how to bounce back.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that is self-aware enough to be mad at himself, I guess, enough to fix those mistakes going forward. It seems like less so the foul on Guinzotti at the end, and more so maybe just like a split second of falling asleep when it mattered most, and letting Guinzotti get behind you like that was I think more key than the foul even, right? Giving him the chance in the first place to get that foul was highly unfortunate. But other than that, he had a fantastic game, shut everything down. I think he had a good game. And just to touch on, I guess, one more of the new guys that I forgot made his regular season debut as well. Ariel Martinez came in for the last bit of the game, very last few minutes. I think he got subbed in 86th minute, according to FOTMob. He impressed me in those few minutes. I don't know if you got that same impression as well. Like he created a few chances single-handedly, just kind of took on a couple defenders and almost created a goal that would have put the game away. I'll say this about him. When we announced that signing, I was a little weirded out, very skeptical about it, because he is obviously a little older. He's not one of the guys I expected to be coming to this team at all. He's 36 years old. But I think having seen the energy he plays with, he's electric on the ball. He's just really, really okay with, and actually it seems to be excited by the fact that he can be taking on 2 or 3 guys at once, and does it pretty well. From what I've seen from his time in Hartford and Miami as well. He does it pretty well. He seems like he's in really good shape still for 36 years old. I think we could be looking at a fantastic super sub going forward, like last 20 minutes type guy, maybe even 30 minutes if you want to push it. But I mean, this is a guy that I think can be a really, really good sub for like the last parts of the game. And I think he'll be able to do that role really, really well. Thinking back to his time last year in Hartford, it was Hartford. Even the commentators made it a note, and it made me want to go back and check his. I forgot how many goals he scored last year, but his goals that he scored with Hartford were almost like the majority of them were like single-handedly, like his own work, his own effort goals. They weren't tap-in type goals. Like these are goals that he had to fight for out there in Hartford.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see how much of that he can bring to those like last 20-minute segment, maybe like that last fourth of the game. We might need him to come out and just put in as much effort as he can and create something. He's fun. It looks like he might be a really electric player. So I think that would have stood out a little bit more if obviously he finished and scored that goal and created that goal. But worth mentioning, I think, in my opinion, just because I think he, in that short time, has potential to exceed the expectations I honestly set pretty low for him. So I'm excited to see what he can do. Really, I think he can be a fun guy to watch.
Yeah, I actually had a note about him coming on late in the game and how he and Dayon Harris and Charlie Dennis were combining very well, and they did this twice. One of them ended up with Dayon Harris getting a little bit of space. Unfortunately, his shot was not what you needed in that moment.
Right.
But if you continue to create those opportunities, as in like you have those three guys on the field at the same time, then they're going to get more chances and they're going to turn more of those into goals. So maybe some more time on the field for those three together. I kind of like the idea of Dayon Harris just playing as almost a striker as opposed to even on the wing. This was a question I actually had for you, Carlos. With Harris not starting, this was something that I think you had talked about during the offseason, giving Harris more responsibility. How did you think that he felt coming on late in the game? And did you feel that possibly he wanted more of that, or did you think more playing time, or did you think that he did well with what he had? What was your takeaway there?
I'm back and forth on like my thoughts on Harris coming in pretty late, especially in this game where where Jennings and where JJ Williams weren't really creating anything like at all. I think Dayon deserved a sub earlier than he did get a sub. That being said, he, like you said, I mean, he almost scored that goal that would have put the game away. He created a lot of space and good chances with Ariel Martinez and with Dennis. I'm not surprised that he didn't start because we have JJ Williams and we have Cal Jennings, and they're both really high quality players. And I think they fit the system that Collins wants to play a little bit more than Dayon Harris would, just up top as striker. That being said, I think Dayon is going to be, if this is the role he's going to play going forward this season, I think I'm okay with that, because he brings so much energy, like immediately, kind of like a Juan Tejada type player, but I think even more dangerous on the ball. I think Tejada was fantastic when he would come in late for us, but he was kind of just the guy that would like run at the ball no matter where it was.
Yeah,
I think Dayon Harris has the potential to be even a little more dangerous on the ball, on offense, and I think, I don't know, just based on the eye test, maybe a little faster to create those like quick counterattack possibilities. It seems like he, rapidly got by the Indy backline, but again, just couldn't finish that chance. We'll see what happens with him. I'm back and forth on what I think his role should be, because I don't see where he would fit in as a starter with the lineup we have right now. Maybe somewhere on the wing, but I mean, with Dahlgaard kind of the form he's been in, and the season he had last season, I don't see where he would fit in really. I mean, I think Neil Collins kind of wants Harris as more of a striker than the wing position he's played, the past several seasons. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this, James? I'm really back and forth on it. Again, I just don't see where he would fit in the starting lineup. I feel like he deserves more minutes. Maybe in games like this where his forwards aren't creating anything, bring him in like, I don't know, 65th minute, just a little bit earlier. See what energy he can bring to the team. I don't know. I'm back and forth.
Well, if JJ Williams is going to be the kind of stereotypical striker of, he's a large body up top. He's there to disrupt the defenders and stop them from doing what they want to do in terms of clearing the ball. And he can, hold the defender off with the ball in front of him and kind of lay it to somebody else. I don't mind Cal Jennings being there, but I also don't mind Dayon Harris being there. I think giving Dayon Harris some room to run is always good. And if you can kind of sucker a team in and get them close to your net, and then you give Dayon Harris the room to run, that's obviously when he's going to be at his best. So that's probably why for the majority of his career he's played on the wing, because you can build up speed there. But as you said, if he's not getting past certain players on the wing, then he might need to look elsewhere. And I still think that he's perfectly capable of playing in the center of the field. I think that he's good enough to do, what Cal Jennings was trying to do too. I think it'll come down to possibly between those two, and Cal Jennings probably has the inside track on that just because of his goal scoring record. But whatever. I would like to see him get more opportunities for sure. And I think that, like you said, Cal Jennings wasn't up to it just yet on Saturday night, so maybe give Dayon some more time. But we'll see how it goes. In the coming weeks, I think things are going to change in terms of our formation anyway. And JJ Williams getting the start every week is probably not going to happen either. So, we have to take all of that into consideration. But, Carlos, my last question here. Obviously, we got a penalty in the first half, which was saved. And that kind of took the wind out of our sails, I will say, in that first half. But we still got a goal in the second half, and we were going towards the end here. And unfortunately, we do have to get to the biggest talking point of the game. It was the former Rowdy himself, Sebastian Guenzati, who went down in kind of a cheap foul, if you ask me, but it's not my decision. And it wasn't in the box, and it got called a penalty. And then Aiden Quinn stepped up, scored it, and went up and stood in front of the Rowdies fans right there. So what do we have to say on this? I don't want to – I'm sure that, everybody was fuming at the referee from the Tampa Bay Rowdies organization, as much as they would say that this wasn't their best game, and a tie is probably the best result, in terms of the balance of play. But that penalty and giving up the draw that way, God, that was an absolute kick in the gut.
Yeah, I'm going back to watch it again just because first of all, I love the pain, right? It's great. Second of all, it's just weird, like how that play played out. Again, it just felt like we fell asleep like in that last second, right? I don't know what happened. I mean, it was a long game. The back line played really well, I think, for the most part. And I don't know what's going on out there. The back line played really well for the most part. And I think it just seemed to fall asleep at the last second. Guenzati very much knew what he was doing. He's a veteran player. Lasso's a big guy. That's kind of the guy you want to target if you're looking to draw a penalty. I think just like visually it looks a lot more like a clear foul when you're going up against the biggest guy and kind of running into him and taking the fall. I think it was pretty clearly a foul. Obviously, it wasn't inside the box. But Guenzati knew what he was doing. He was looking to draw that penalty. I don't think, a shot was ever really in the options in the cards for him. I don't know. There's not much else to say about that. I could reiterate all the Rowdies fans' feelings about just what a terrible ref this was and what a terrible call this was. But I mean, I'd be preaching to the choir, right, James? There's not really much else to say about that other than it's unfortunate. It's unlucky. It's unfortunate. But again, I think, like you said, the 1-1 result, the 1-1 draw, I think is fair for how the game played out, for how we played, for how Indy played. I think it's a fine result. But it is very unfortunate the way it happened. And it would have been much nicer to start the season off with 3 points. Game's the game. It happens, and it's unfortunate that it was Sebastian Guenzati who drew the penalty against us. Game's the game. Players go to new places. It happens. And I don't know. I think Lasso will definitely be thinking about that play the rest of the season. He seems like one of the guys that kind of like wears the heart on his sleeve. Isn't really afraid to show his emotions. And he'll be thinking about that play a lot. So hopefully he bounces back pretty easily. I think, like we said earlier, he should. he'll bounce back and learn from any mistakes he made on that play. But you can't blame him too much for that. It was a terrible call. So whatever. That's all I have to say on that. Not much else.
I think actually that's pretty important, is that Sebastian Guanzotti knew that he could get a call going up against a player like Forrest Lasso. If you look at the first half, there was a funny little incident where Sebastian Guanzotti and Aaron Guillen went up for a header together. And as it happened, Aaron Guillen kind of spun, and then when he landed, his head hit the ground, and he did not get the call. And I think it was just because, the referee looks at these two and they're kind of even, size wise. There's not a lot separating them. So if you just go shoulder to shoulder and it kind of ends up poorly, that's not necessarily a call. And he didn't get it. So Aaron Guillen gets up, and God, was he mad at Sebastian Guanzotti. I have rarely seen Aaron Guillen like screaming to that level. I feel like, he does get heated. He does get into it pretty frequently, but I feel like with it being a former player, he was just that much more angry, and he was so mad at Sebastian Guanzotti. You could see it in the replay how much he was screaming like directly at him, at his face, pointing, and it was a little uncomfortable just considering how much we know Guanzotti. But that is a good point. He probably knew that he could get a foul going up against a man who's just that much bigger than him, and unfortunately, the referee's going to go for that. But that's probably going to do it, I think, for our analysis of this game, Carlos. We have one more question here, and that is, who was your man of the match for this game?
It's a great question. I've been thinking about that a lot. I think the back line again deserves a pretty good shout out. I think they played a good game, especially kind of having to re-gel, I guess, with Doherty and Lasso back there. Relatively surprised Kleeman didn't grab a start back there on the back line. I thought he would definitely grab that, but I'm tangenting. It's a different topic. I'd give it to Lasso if it wasn't for that last minute play. It happens. I don't want to knock him too much for it, but it is what it is. I'll go Charlie Dennis. I know it's cheap, and I know I mentioned him a lot already. I was trying to think of somebody like just, I don't know, other than someone I hadn't talked a lot about already, but I think he stood out like really well. He played his game well. I think as far as like replacing Leo Fernandez on the season goes, he's going to have to fill that role, and I think he did it pretty well. So he's obviously, it's hard to, be Leo Fernandez, but I think Charlie Dennis can fulfill that role. You know what I mean? He can dribble well. He can take on a couple guys, distribute well. And I think he'll grab more than a few goals this season. I think he started well, and I think he's unlucky to not have ended up, at least with an assist this game. It is what it is. But, yeah, he created most of our chances, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does as the season progresses.
Yeah, Charlie Dennis is a very good shout, and I had him among my front runners. As I said earlier, he passed the eye test, so to speak. But another player for me who passed the eye test was Jordan Doherty, so he is going to be my man of the match. I think that between him and Aaron Guillen, it was a pretty good showing. Forrest Lasso, I've already not talked about the demerits that I found for him, but otherwise I think they did pretty well. Jordan Doherty, I think, though, deserves it because it was his first game back after his stint in Ireland, and he did very well. So there we go. Those are our two men of the match. And now I will go into a little ad here for the RBLR Sports Shop. So liking and subscribing is, of course, free, and we appreciate when you do that. But if you think that you might need some new threads coming up this year and you want to support our podcast at the same time, you can do that. You can support our podcast while you are watching the Rays, the Lightning, the Bucks, or the Rowdies. It does not matter. Use the promo code COYR for 10% off, and there will be a link in the description to shop.rblrsports.com, like you can see right there. So thank you, everyone, for checking that out. We appreciate when you do. Now, Carlos, let's get into our preview of the game this week away to Orange County in Southern California. If you could get us started on that, and then we will go into what the game might look like. I was just able to finish watching their game against Louisville, so I think I might have a little bit of analysis, whatever that counts for.
Yep. As you've noted, Orange County away is our upcoming matchup this Saturday. The Rowdies will travel out west to play the team that still lives in my nightmares rent-free out in Southern California. They did lose their opening game, their home opener, to our Eastern Conference rivals, Louisville City, 3-1. Yes, they lined up in a 4-3-3 formation. It's a mixture of youth and veterans from USL and abroad. I think we touched on them a little bit a couple episodes ago when we were previewing our Western Conference opponents. Mixed bag of players, some potentially to be pretty good this season, but hey, I mean, they were very bad last season, and I think this should be a game where we can come out with 3 points. Their most important players will include Milan Iloski, 2022 top scorer, and Emil Nielsen. They'll definitely have a lot of young players, like I mentioned, with chips on their shoulders, stuff to prove. These are kids that can really make a mark at any moment in the game. So it's really, really important to keep an eye on them because I guess, especially when you're playing against a younger team, there's not a lot of film to watch on some of these players. So I think Neil Collins definitely has a challenge waiting for him out there in the West Conference. Again, could be viewed as a potential revenge game for the 2021 USL final. These guys live rent-free in my head, so I really hope we do win. Keep an eye out for the preview coming out on Thursday, which should go more in-depth on all the tactical stuff, but I think we can mention a little bit before we jump into the predictions. That being said, they lost their opener against Louisville 3-1. We'll have a little bit of film to base off our game plan off of. I think Neil Collins, again, does have a little bit of a challenge because it's a younger team, but at least there's a little bit of a template because Louisville already beat them 3-1 out there. So it's a precedent for Eastern Conference teams to go out there and win. James, do you have any tactical breakdown of our upcoming opponents, Orange County SC?
Yeah, so like I said, I did just get to watch the game, and I watched the first half and the second half were 2 very different halves, and I think that they kind of showed one way that the Rowdies can break down Orange County and one way that the Rowdies can defend against Orange County, so to speak. The first half, Orange County looked honestly really, really bad. They did not look good at all, and there was just nothing going for them at all. I think they lined up in roughly a 4-3-3 shape, and Kyle Scott in the midfield was the guy that did anything of note for them in the first half. It was the only reason that they had a good amount of possession. It seemed like he was getting the ball and he was actually trying to do things with it, and he would draw fouls every now and again. Other than that, though, they didn't have a lot going for them, as I've said, and especially going down Louisville City's right side, they had so much success. So Milan Iloski was the Golden Boot winner for the 2022 season in USL. He is a player that they're going to want to rely on, obviously, and have him score a lot of goals for them. Unfortunately, though, it did not, for Orange County, it did not seem like he is interested in doing a lot of defending. You have to do an amount of defending unless you are, the best player in the world. And Lionel Messi can get away with it when he is playing for Argentina. I don't think Milan Iloski is quite at that level, let's say. So unfortunately for them, they just kind of had to deal with the fact that there's really only one player going down, on defending on the left side. So Alex Villanueva is their young left back. He's 20 years old, and that was definitely their weak side. But it really wasn't down to the left back, the 20-year-old. It was more just down to the fact that he kept getting isolated down there. So Indy, I'm already doing it. Louisville went down the right side, and they scored within the first 5 minutes. And that was already their second run going down the right side because Villanueva had no help. So they did well. I think the second Louisville goal was also going down the right side and getting a cross off. So again, here is a template. If Alex Villanueva is going to be left alone, then you need to go and attack and get as many goals as you can, because in the second half, it turned around a lot. It was actually Orange County 100% going and attacking Louisville for almost all of the second half. Now, Louisville got 2 goals in the second half, so it's kind of counterintuitive. How did they do that? Well, as it happened, Orange County ended up getting caught on the break as opposed to the other way around. In the first half, it was Louisville City that was bossing possession, and they were really doing their best on the field to keep Orange County out of it. in the second half, when everything changed around a little bit, it was a lot easier for Orange County, and they looked like a much better team. They looked like a team that could compete. They looked like a team that is going to give us some headaches for sure. So they switched up to having, a back three when they had possession, and Alex Villanueva, this is where he really shined, got to essentially focus on attacking, and he was very good when he did that. Milan Alowski kind of moved more into the middle of the attacking portion of the field, and that's where he was also a lot more effective. I don't know if that is all of where he played last season when he scored all of his goals, but so we're going to have to, probably keep an eye on him even if he is out on the left side, obviously, but he's a lot easier to contain, let's say, when he's out there. If he's in the middle, I think that he's going to have a lot more influence on the game. And then the last piece that I really wanted to bring up is the thing that we already mentioned is Orange County is made up of a lot of kind of older European veterans, so to speak, like Emil Nelson and Mark Sparky McNulty. I found on the Orange County website for their own preview. He's called Mark Sparky McNulty, a Scottish guy. So that was hard. A little interesting.
Sparky. Yeah. I like that.
But he did not get on the field this past weekend. I don't know if he's unavailable or unfit at the moment, but
that's why we'll see
how it goes. Exactly. No kidding.
You gotta play. You have a guy named Sparky. You have to let him play. Are you kidding me?
I'm assuming that they will get a chance coming up soon. Hopefully not this weekend, though. But yeah, the rest of their team is made up of these much younger players, and they are trying to institute a bit of a youth movement as well. So Alex Villanueva is one of those, but they also have this kid, Bryce Jameson, who came off the bench, and he is 17 years old. He was a live wire as soon as he came on. Boy, he was all over the place, and he was really kind of running the Louisville City defenders rag. They had to make a couple substitutions at the back line. They took Manny Perez off. Manny Perez, who had such a good first half because he was mostly focused on the attack. He had to defend, and then he kind of wasn't up for it, towards the end of the game. So we're really going to have to keep an eye out on Orange County when it comes to transition moments and obviously set pieces. Set pieces are very important to the game. That was a large part of the reason that we lost to them in the 2021 USL Championship final. But additionally, they were very good catching Louisville City on the counter. And if not for some wasteful finishing, they probably would have won that game. 3-1 is the final scoreline, but it is not indicative of the way the game went. And there's a lot that we're going to have to keep an eye out for on Louisville City. How do we maintain that? Well, it's obviously easier said than done, but don't give up many set pieces and don't give them many chances on the transition. That's how it's going to have to go.
Yeah. I think not having watched the game, just looking back at the match report, some numbers, a couple things of note that just jump out at me right from the start. Again, we're talking about Louisville up there with us as maybe 1 and 2 best teams Eastern Conference, among the best teams in the league. Orange County, at least according to this, seems to have outplayed them overall throughout the game.
Yeah.
They had more shots on target. They had 4 shots on target versus Louisville's 3. They had 6 more total shots. They had 14 shots to Louisville's 8. A stat I like to pay attention to, which I think kind of gets at chance creation and who was really getting at into the other team's area more than anything, is the shots inside the box stat. Orange County had 11 shots inside the box. Louisville had 4. So Orange County was penetrating Louisville's back line, according to this, and at least creating dangerous opportunities. They even hit the woodwork once, according to FOTMob. So yes. This is the team that, as again, not having watched the game, not really knowing anything about a lot of these young players that we don't know anything about, looks to be dangerous. And we can't really just go in there expecting to get 3 points. I think we're going to have to fight for it. But I think as far as coming off of a tough 1-1 result, I think this is a good team, a good test to go out there and try and get our footing under us against them. So it should be a good game. I really do think it'll be exciting based off what you're telling me and based off what I'm reading here. It should be a fun one. But I do think, well, I'll save my prediction for a second. But yeah, it looks like it'll be a good game. Orange County, dangerous team. But again, I think the challenge more than anything when it comes to tactically preparing is what you've talked about, what I've mentioned. There's not a lot of film on some of these young kids, but they can run like hell, and they're going to run like hell because they have energy out the wazoo, and they're looking to make a name for themselves. So they're dangerous. They're really, really dangerous. That's why any young team like, Loudon, any 2 team is always a little dangerous because they can do that. But this is certainly not your average, 2 team. I don't even think they're a 2 team anymore. I'm pretty sure they're independent now. They're certainly dangerous, and they have this mix of veteran guys as well. So it'll be a good one.
Yeah, it definitely will, and we're going to hope for the best when it comes to the Rowdies getting out there. So, Carlos, let's get into those predictions that you just talked about. Eureka has given his prediction. That was a 1-0 win, and our special guest on the predictions this week was David Morales, Tampa proper. If you would like to follow him on Twitter, he predicted a 2-0 win. So, Carlos, it is now on you. What is your prediction for this game?
Yeah, I think it looks like they create a lot of chances, but I see, just comparing our back line to the last game and thinking about what we were able to do against Indy, I think we can pull out a shutout if we play our game, our back line plays our game, and they, shut down this mix of veterans, older guys, especially, sometimes when we play against like literal children under 18-year-olds, like it's very noticeable. They're certainly not going to have anything over the air against Forest Lasso. And it's going to be hard for them to, get around our huge back line in Forest Lasso and Guillen. And who knows if Kleeman gets a start as well. It's a big guy. It will certainly be noticeable if there's, younger guys playing against our back line. I think we can get the shutout. I'm going to say Kyle Jennings and JJ Williams click this next week. They start to get their footing, and we win 2-0.
All right. Well, that is 2-0 predictions then. I am going to buck the trend a little bit here, and I am going to say a 2-2 draw. 2-2 draw between us and Orange County. But I'm still hoping, obviously, that the Rowdies get a win. I just need to give myself a little bit better of a chance, I guess.
That's fair.
All right. So, Carlos, with that, we're going to move into our final segment here, Extra Time. And I'll go through these 2 first points, and then I'll leave the last 2 to you. The first one I want to say is there was an announcement today of transfer news for the Tampa Bay Rowdies. Santi Castaneda, one of our academy players who has not got a ton of playing time out there, he will be joining 3rd Bundesliga side MSV Duisburg. So very interesting. He will be doing that in July. I'm kind of ambiguous about this one because I just, it's very interesting to go abroad to the 3rd Bundesliga. I think that what he would like to do is turn this into a lot of playing time, which is what you want to do when you're a teenager. You want to get as much playing time at the highest level as you can. If he thinks that he can turn this into playing time, then good. Let's say that he is kind of knocking on the Rowdies' door this year. Maybe by July, he'll be, I think, closer to 18, if not 18. He goes there over to Germany, and with Duisburg, he's really knocking on the door. Let's say he plays with their 2nd division or their 2nd team, and then he moves on to their 1st team when he turns 19 next year. I think that would be a good trajectory for him, and he might, have a pretty good pathway into the pros at that point. So we're going to have to see. But otherwise, I was a little ambiguous about that. I do want to say congratulations either way, though, because if this is what he thinks is going to put him on the best path to the pros, then obviously I do hope that it works out for him.
Yeah, that's sick. It's so cool to see. It really is random. It was kind of out of left field. But it's really cool to see it, and I'm glad. It looks like Neil Collins is happy for him based on what he said in the report the Rowdies put out. I have a relative that coaches where he plays out in Florida Premier and knows him pretty personally, and I know he's really, really excited, and I know my relative is really excited for him. So it looks like this is not something that is like as random to us as it might have been to people that know him a bit better. Obviously, definitely a really talented player. So I could see it, working out for him in the long term. I think he's going to do well over there. It seems like a good level for him to make start getting some playing time and whatnot. But it is very random. But I'm glad for him. It's really, really cool. And I'm happy that we're kind of it's cool to see young guys go out and start making a name for themselves and having that start with the Tampa Bay Rowdies, right? So who knows? Maybe that's the beginning of something special for him.
Yeah, it would be cool. So the next point that I want to give to everybody is I wrote an article on the USL getting into the CONCACAF Champions League. It will be there will be a link in the description, but it's also all over our Twitter at the moment. It is on mine and RBLR Sports as well as RBLR Rowdies. So please do check it out. Let me know if you like it. I would like to see the USL in the CONCACAF Champions League, and I explain my reasoning there because I think that us not being in it would be stupid, to put it very succinctly. But there's obviously a lot more to it than that. So yeah, please do check that out and let me know what you think. And Carlos, I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, first of all, that's a great article and a great topic. And again, I don't know what's going on out here. Like, this hallway is always so loud. It's like I can't record stuff in a college campus ever. But whatever. Your article is really fascinating. It's a really interesting topic because we've seen like second division teams do international tournaments and continental tournaments across the world, and find some success, like second division teams and whatnot. Really, really interesting topic. So I just want to reiterate that it's really, really worth a read. Also, Tampa Bay Rowdies attendance this past week was listed at 6,893, 6,900. We'll round up. Close to a sellout, not quite there. Good place to start, good base. I'm really excited to see where the attendance goes from there because I think we can. I think we can get higher than that. We've seen higher attendances and home openers before, so it's a little unfortunate that we couldn't get that sellout title over our first game. But it happens. So exciting, good place to start. Let's get that higher. I wish it could have been 6,894 and I was there, but unfortunately I'm up here in DC. I'll be down for a game in a couple of weeks though, so I'm really, really excited. The game against Orange County will be on at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Stay up late with us, tune in, and I'm sure we'll all have a late night with the Tampa Bay Rowdies. Hopefully, a late night ends in 3 points for us. And James, before we quickly wrap it up, I just want to quickly mention a couple notable results across the league. I think, really just one. Loudoun United went out to Memphis 901 FC. This is worth mentioning in this extra time segment. Loudoun United went out and won 3-1 this weekend at Memphis 901 FC. What the hell is that? I thought Memphis was good. Is Loudoun good? What's going on? Did you watch that game at all, James?
So I did not watch the game, but I obviously saw the results, and I was just as dumbfounded as you were. It's one thing to beat Memphis. I guess it's another thing to beat Memphis in Memphis, and you're Loudoun United. So, it's kind of shocking, and I guess that we're going to have to see if that was a one-off. I think that Loudoun does have a bit better options than they have had in the past, but still very, very surprising.
Yeah, sorry, random tangent there, but it just heavily worth mentioning because this is the team that I think is consensus like worst team in the Eastern Conference.
Right, exactly.
Free 3 points for anybody who plays them. If you're like a top 5, top 3 Eastern Conference team, Tampa Bay Rowdies, Louisville, Memphis, a game at home against Loudoun is like supposed to be free points, like easily. Away, it should also be 3 points, but like at home to not get at least 1 point even is insane. So I don't know, worth mentioning. Memphis in the mud, Loudoun United up. Who knows? Are they good? We have a whole season to find out, James. I'm so excited. Monterey Bay and Hartford also played a barn burner 5-3. Worth mentioning. If you didn't see that game, go back and look at the highlights. Monterey Bay won 5-3 against Hartford, and there was like 4 goals in a span of like 5 minutes. Insane. Go back and take a look at those highlights if you haven't seen them. Worth mentioning. Last thing I'll mention. I'm done. My mouth is shut now. No.
All right. Well, there you go. You have your marching orders, listeners. Do check that out. Do read my article. Do also, support the Rowdies. Tune in on Saturday. And we will be tuning in as well. I think they might even be trying to organize a watch party. So keep an eye on all of your social media feeds. And while you're there, please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We are at RBLR Sports, of course. I am also on Twitter if you'd like to get at me, at RBLR James K. What about you, Carlos?
At Carlos GPA10 on Twitter. Been tweeting about the Rowdies and whatnot. Patrick Ewing was fired from Georgetown men's basketball. Relatively topical up here in DC. Been a big chatting point. So I've been tweeting a lot about that as well. But obviously Rowdies make up majority of my tweeting content. Come drop a follow. Throw any questions our way. James and I like fielding those questions.
Yeah.
Hashtag AskRBLR.
Exactly. Please do that, and please like and subscribe to our podcast, of course, as well. We are on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app. We're on Apple and Google Podcasts. We're on YouTube and all other major podcast platforms. So, with a draw in the bag and hopefully a win on the way, come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.